Hey guys, welcome back to Sci. Now in this lesson, we're going to be continuing on cellular respiration. And to start off, let's look at this equation I've written out here. So you have C6H12O6. And what this basically means is that there's 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen in this molecule. And we know this is glucose because, well, we've talked about it in glycolysis. So this is the beginning of cellular respiration. You have that glucose plus 6 oxygen molecules, and the result or the product is 6 CO2 or carbon dioxide plus 6 water plus ATP. And so those are the products of this reaction. Now, I want you to think to yourself, where in glycolysis did we see CO2, H2O, or oxygen? In fact, when we look at glycolysis, and we've written out the products of glycolysis right here, none of the molecules that we talked about in that equation. We have pyruvate, NADH, and while we have ATP, so we covered this, it isn't accounted for in your glucose molecule. And we're going to be talking about the next product. So we've talked about ATP, but in this part of cellular respiration, we're going to be including CO2. And what part is that? Well, it's called the citric acid cycle. So let's start off. Let's look down here as we go towards our pyruvate. So we have a pyruvate here, and we can see that it goes into your mitochondria. So it goes into your mitochondria through your outer membrane and also through your inner membrane. And there's something specific that happens as it goes through that inner membrane. So let's look. You have a step where it passes through your mitochondrial pyruvate carrier. So this is a protein, a transport protein. We don't really need to think about it as MPC. Let's think of it as a transport protein that brings your pyruvate from in between the inner and outer membrane to the matrix of the mitochondria. And this is a part of the mitochondria that we talked a bit about in the parts of the cell video series. But let's look. So you have your pyruvate, and it turns from pyruvate, and it becomes oxidized. So you add a coenzyme A to the pyruvate molecule, and then you also add, or you oxidize it with NAD+. And so from the NAD+, you get a product of NADH and CO2. Now, where is this CO2 coming from? It's actually coming from this part of the molecule. And so your result is your coenzyme A added to your 2-carbon molecule, and that's called acetyl-CoA. Pyruvate molecule is oxidized, and what happens to your NAD+? Well, it becomes reduced, and this is something we also talked about last video. So if you don't remember oxidation and reduction, make sure to check out the last video. But let's continue. So you have your pyruvate that's oxidized, and you get acetyl-CoA. Now, remember, you get 2 pyruvates from that single glucose molecule. So everything that is produced is multiplied by 2. So you get 2 times the NADH. And we'll be talking about the significance of NADH in your cellular respiration in just a bit. So let's continue on to the mitochondria. So you have your pyruvate going through, and then you have a cycle here. And this is your citric acid cycle. Now I've written that out in a larger diagram here. And you can see that we also call it the Krebs cycle. But for now, because it's a bit easier to understand what is going on, let's call it the citric acid cycle. So you have your acetyl-CoA that's added to oxaloacetate, and that's a 4-carbon molecule. So you have a 2-carbon molecule added to a 4-carbon molecule. And then your coenzyme A is removed from your acetyl-CoA. So then you get a resulting citrate. And your citrate is a 6-carbon molecule. So you have those 2 carbons as well as the 4 carbons from the oxaloacetate, and you get a citrate molecule. Now we're going to be looking at these 6 carbons as they continue through, because they're actually quite significant. The amount of carbons that are found in the products of these reactions that occur in your Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. Now the next step, you lose H2O. Now what else occurs? Well, isocitrate is produced, and these again are products that occur in between, so we're going to be skipping over some of these, but it's important to just know some of these products as we continue. Now this is an important step from isocitrate to alpha ketoglutarate, and what happens here is you lose a carbon. You lose one of your 6 carbons to CO2. And we talked about this. This is a product of cellular respiration. So you lose that CO2, and again, you get the oxidation of that molecule and your reduction of the NAD+. So you get a NADH that is produced. And again, this is also significant to cellular respiration, and we'll be talking about that next video. Well, you continue. You get now a 4 carbon. And then this next step is also significant. You get a production of ATP as you go from succinyl coenzyme A to succinate. So you get these, you continue on, and then you get FADH2. Now what is FADH2? Well, you still get the oxidation of your succinate, but FADH2 is similar to NADH. It's an electron carrier. And we'll be talking about this next video. FADH2 is also found in the next step of cellular respiration, but you get that production of FADH2, which again is similar to NADH, and then you can kind of tell that by both the fact that they're both reduced from FAD or NADH, so they get that electron from your molecule. So now your oxaloacetate, you can see that there's a final NADH that is produced at the end of that. But more significantly, you get that final 4 carbon molecule, your oxaloacetate, and this is the major part. So there's a couple major steps that are found here. So number 1, it's the movement from, it's your removal of those carbon atoms in the form of CO2. And then you also have the combination of your oxaloacetate with your acetyl-CoA. Now, the reduction of NAD+ to NADH is also significant, but we'll be talking about a little bit more next time. Now, as a summary of the Krebs cycle, you can see that we have the production of NADH. In fact, we have 6 NADH. You also have 2 FADH2, and you have 2 ATP. And now, we'll be seeing how the NADH and FADH2 are factored into cellular respiration in the next video. So make sure to join back next week.